Hey everyone, FusedVR coming at ya, and today gonna be taking a suggestion out of FusedVR.com, and this one's by Ben Liu. And he asked for building a basic color picker that's kind of glued to your hand, exactly like in Tilt Brush. And so this suggestion is from a couple of months ago, and I'm finally getting around to it. But using the plugin that we used in the Tilt Brush tutorial, it's actually a little complicated on how you can get it to actually work because it wasn't really built for that. So I'm just going to show you how you can input that in. So thanks, Ben, for the question. And if you have suggestions or any other questions, make sure to go to FusedVR.com and you can put those there. And me or someone in the community will get back to you. And feel free to also help around with other people's questions. I think that's kind of what we want to build as a resource. But let me show you what we're going to be building. All right, so here in Unity, and as you can see, I have my controller here, and the color picker is the same as the Tilt Brush tutorial, and it's now glued to my controller. And I have my right controller here for selecting, and yeah, here I can just go ahead and select it. I can select here, and I've already integrated this with the Tilt Brush tutorial, but I'm not going to show that in this video, but it should be really straightforward to add. And hopefully in the future, I want to show you how you can use this color picker for something like Vive Spray. But other than that, let's just go ahead and get started on implementing this. Alright, so to get started, I'm going to go ahead, open up Unity, and let's go ahead and create a new project. Let's call this one Simple Color Vive. Lousy name, but whatever. Go ahead and put that on my desktop. That's fine. Save it wherever you like. And in just a second, we get Unity open. Sweet. And we need to go to the asset store to get a couple things. So as always, the SteamVR plugin. Oops. There we go. Go ahead and import that in. And that'll just take a quick second. And the other thing we'll need is the simple, well, first we have to accept SteamVR. And the other thing we'll actually need is the simple color picker. So that's the asset that we used in the Tilt Brush tutorial. So go ahead and import that and select OK. Perfect. This was actually implemented for an older version, so I'm just going to go ahead and say update. So that'll just take a quick second. Nothing terrible usually goes wrong. Unity is like pretty good about that. So just to quickly organize everything, I'm going to go ahead and create a color picker folder. And I'm going to go ahead and move pretty much all of the assets associated with the color picker into this color picker folder, just for a little organization. Now I'm going to go ahead and drag the SteamVR prefab into here. And I'm also on the right controller, I'm going to add a SteamVR laser pointer. Make this red just so we can see it. And yeah, so now when I go ahead and hit play, grab my controllers. But yeah, I think you saw, let me move this into the, let me close this out just so we can see it here. But yeah, so now that right controller, now I guess this is the right controller, but this now has a red laser pointer out. And that's just important when you're designing for these experiences. You want to have some indication of where you're heading on this color picker. But now that we have that, I'm just going to go ahead and go into the color picker, and they have a prefab in here already. And I'm just going to drag that out, and I'll go ahead and hit reset and move it out so we can actually see it somewhere. Oh, we also should just get rid of this main camera so that it's using the Vive camera instead. And that is facing this way, which is fine. So we can go ahead and move the color picker into, like, say 40 or maybe like 200. Yeah, so this is what we had set up last time. So we had the color picker in front and the Vive controller right here, and then you just kind of point at it off in the distance. But to actually use it, we're gonna want to first go ahead and parent it to our left controller. So our left controller is going to be the one that we actually attach this to. And we actually don't even need the model for this, so I'm just going to disable that. And instead of having it at 0, 0, 200, let's go ahead and put that at 0, 0, 0. And let's also shrink it by a factor of like 0.005, like make it really tiny, because otherwise it's gigantic. And so at this point, we'll just try this out. It's tilted the wrong way, so we're just gonna quickly go ahead and rotate it up. And it looks like, if we just like quickly look at the transform, it's rotated to about 90 here. So now it's facing flat, so it'll now be aligned correctly with our controller. So that's good. So the next step is being able to interact with it. And we actually, to do that, we need to go into the color picker draggable script. And this is where a majority of the work gets done for selecting the color. And so this is a pretty important script. And as you can see right now, it's already integrated for mouse input. But what we're going to go ahead and do is do this for the SteamVR input. So for that, what we need is a public SteamVR tracked object. And let's just call this the right controller. And we'll also need a transform in a bit later, but let's just get this working with the controller for right now. So basically all we really need to do is just replace this input.getMouseButton down and up and just touch with the SteamVR stuff. And I have this code off screen here. It's the code I always copy in all my tutorials. But we can just go ahead and update this here with our correct variable. So this is just going to get the device. And so this is the touchdown method for the trigger. So that's just going to go ahead and replace our get mouse down button. So we can go ahead and replace that. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this line again here. And so this is now set to get mouse button up. We're going to change, instead of down, just say up. And the last thing is this is just going to be, instead of get down, it's just going to be get touch. So with that, we've pretty much just replaced how the mouse functionality works here. The other thing we need to do is this one does a raycast from the screen, from the mouse point to inside the world. We're actually just going to do it from the SteamVR controller. So for that, we can actually just go ahead, comment that out, and then we'll use the same name, and then we'll just say new ray equals right controller dot transform dot position. So that's the origin of where the ray that we're going to shoot from our controller starts. So this is like the very tip of that laser pointer. And then we need to tell it the direction. So that's going to be transform dot forward. So with that, we've basically implemented the raycast from the controller off into our color picker. So that's perfect. So again, we're just going to go ahead and copy this code right here, and we're going to use that in the get touch because again they're doing the same code here for detecting where you hit with the mouse, and we just want to do that with the Steam controller. So for that, basically just go ahead, copy and paste that code in, and we can get rid of point here, or actually we'll keep point, but we're going to replace, instead of camera.main.screen, we're going to just say hit.point. So what that does is when we do a raycast from this controller and it hits our color picker, what that will do is basically say what point on our color picker did we hit. And that is going to be represented as a 3D object, or a 3D vector. And that's the exact point that we want to use. So that's perfect. So that's all we need to do there. I'm actually going to get rid of this closest point to bounds. You don't really need that because we're doing the hit dot point, and it just, as if we hit it, we've already hit it, so it's just unnecessary calculations to do closest point there. And so then the last thing we need to do on this script is change this on drag function and then change this set thumb position, because those were designed very specifically for having your color picker centered at 0, 0 and the X and Y. And that's not the case when you have a controller that can move around in 6 directions with the rotation and position. So we need to fix that really quickly. So let's start with set thumb position. So with set thumb position, what we need to do is actually change this thing to work with local position instead of global position. So as you see right now, it's using thumb dot position. We ideally instead want to use local position. And if we just change it right away, it'll introduce a few bugs. So what we actually need to do is create a temporary variable, and we're going to call this temp. And in it, we're going to save thumb.local position. So that saves the current local position. Next, what we're going to do is say thumb.position equals point. Now, what that does is it replaces the full position in global space. So that's exactly when it hits where it hits the color picker. So if this is the color picker and then I hit right here, that is the point, and that's where we're setting our thumb that represents where we've selected. And so now what we need to do is, because this code is very generic, they have these booleans here for whether you want to be fixed along the x-axis or fixed along the y-axis. So for that, what we actually need to do is update this to be temp.x. If it's fixed along the x, we just want to use temp.x, which is that local position that we saved earlier. Otherwise, just use the current value. And same here for the y, temp.y. And here, what we're actually going to do is just use the local position for the z because that's fixed to the plane. And I'm also just going to add a -1 in here, not 11, -1. And that's just going to represent just moving it a little bit forward on the plane so that it doesn't have these weird glitch errors where the mesh isn't sure whether to render the thumbnail that's representing where it was selected or the background, which is the actual colors. So that's why we're going to have that in there. And so that pretty much does it for set thumb position. Now the other thing we need to change is this onDrag function. And so this one is, again, it uses the global position. So because, again, we want it to be mapped to the local position of the plane, not like whatever rotation or position this controller is at, we're actually going to have to change this one to local position. And the problem is these colliders are all set in global position as well, so we can't really use them. For that, what we're going to actually do is change this to be a box collider instead of a collider. And instead of using bounds, we're just going to use the size. And those are all mapped in local space. So that's perfect for us there. We can't really do that here because there's no bounds.min for box colliders. That's set in local space. So what we're going to actually have to do is a little hacky, but it's basically we're going to create another variable up here, and we're going to call this public transform minBound. And what that exactly represents is it's going to be a point on our space that we're going to use for the local position. And that's going to be also attached to the controller so that it follows along and so the local positions are all in sync. So that's what we're going to be doing there. And so just to finish up all the code changes we need to do, we're just going to say minBound dot transfer. So this is already a transform, so we just have to say local position. And with that, we've pretty much updated this so that it will now work really easily with the controllers. The only thing we really need to do is just go into Unity, and we will just go ahead and go onto the color picker here, and we just have to assign these controllers. So I'm just going to go ahead, assign the right controller to that, and I need to create a minBound for the hue picker. So for that, I'm just going to create an empty game object. I'll name it minBound, and I'm just going to copy the thumb location, for where it is currently because that's actually the min bound already that we want to use. So if you can see that right there, that's the minimum that we're going to use. So just go ahead and paste that in and just go ahead and drag the min bound in here. And so that's all we need. The rest of the settings should be set correctly. So that's perfect. So same deal for the saturation. So the saturation is, if I can get it without the camera, is this picker right here, and that again is going to be the min bound. So let's go ahead and create another game object called this one min bound. And for this, go ahead and copy the transform of our thumb for that one and go ahead and paste that. Now there's another draggable script right here, so I can just go ahead, drag min bound onto the transform and drag the right controller onto the right controller. And so at this point we've pretty much set it up to work correctly. So let me go ahead and try it out. Alright, so I actually just noticed a quick bug, and that was a mistake on my part here. So it was actually in the set thumb position. It's not supposed to be point X in the else condition. It's supposed to be thumb.localPosition.x, and it's also the same deal here. It's a thumb.localPosition.y, and the reason for that is because we are setting local position, not global position. So now if I jump back into Unity, everything should work just as expected. So yep. So as you can see here, I am changing. We have an indicator on the right for what the color should be. And then I also have a hue, or yeah, this is the hue, this is saturation here. And so yeah, so that works perfectly. It's attached here. And if you just want to get the color, then all you really need to do is add a onColor change method. So let's just write that really quickly. And it's basically, we'll need a color manager script. So we can go ahead and create one real fast. Let's call this color manager. Sure, reload everything. And we just want a private, or yeah, we'll call this we'll just create a public color. And here we're just gonna say void on color change. Now it needs to be spelled exactly this way. And they give us an HSB color, which is just what they use. And so what we're going to say is this dot color equals color dot to color. And so this is a bit hacky. You can do it as a singleton if you would like, but this is just the very, very basic code just to get something working. And so we just need to go ahead and attach that to the top of this color picker right here. So just go ahead and do that. And once we do that, we basically at this point can say let's just create a very simple cube in the scene. And let's say 3D object, cube. Let's just keep that. Actually, no, I don't like that position there. Let's just move it, say like, I don't know, about there. And let's create another script here. It's change color. So this is going to have a reference to our color manager. So let's just give that color manager CM. And then on update, what it's just going to do is get the renderer component, not the render buffer, the renderer, and we're going to get the material from the render, and then we're going to set the color to cm.color. And just to make sure there's no like wacky bugs, we're also just going to say here, like, just initialize the color to say, I don't know, let's go with a blue. Sure, why not? So it's going to be initialized to blue, and otherwise it's whatever the color picker says. So at this point, just go ahead, drag our change color script onto here, and drag the color manager script onto the CM. There we go. Go ahead and hit, or let's not save the scene, but at this point, yep, as you can see, it is blue, just as expected here. And yeah, at this point, oops, my controllers decided to switch. But yeah, as you can see, the cube now changes color based on the color picker, and this is all happening dynamically. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for this. I know this is a lot of coding in this one, but that's basically how you would use a simple color picker to create a very simple thing like this. There are a few other options I came across when doing research for this, but for the most part, I think this is like probably the simplest way based on like if you have the tilt brush tutorial, you can just go ahead and do the changes to draggable and it'll just work. And that, yeah, there are a few other options using UGUI, but they I think are a bit more trickier than this. This is probably the simplest way to just kind of get something started and start coloring a scene. But thanks again to Ben for asking this, and apologies on the delay, but hopefully this is useful for you guys. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have suggestions for stuff, make sure to put those on FusedVR.com. And yeah, we're always looking at them. But that'll do it for this week. And this has been FuseMan, and I'm signing out.